Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the media. Welcome to our post-cabinet brief for Thursday, November 17, 2016. This morning, the brief will be given by the Honorable Raphael Trotman, Minister of Natural Resources. Mr. Trotman.
Good morning, everyone. Always a pleasure to be here. Welcome. This morning, I will give the brief on behalf of Minister of State, Minister Harman, who is unable to be here this morning. So we cover this morning 15 topics, and I'll go through them without any delay. The Honourable Minister of Public Security presented a report to Cabinet on crime and security statistics, as well as plans going into the end of the year, and particularly at the Christmas time. The Honourable Minister in his report highlighted the situation by way of statistics about the number of and types of crime that were committed for the reporting period, which would have been over the past week. Among the highlights were that there was no incident of piracy during the reporting period. This was attributed to ongoing collaboration between the Guyana Police Force, the Guyana Defense Force, and their Surinamese counterparts. The Honourable Minister of Public Security then briefed Cabinet on the planned security measures that would be implemented during the upcoming holiday season. Cabinet was also briefed on plans which the Guyana Police Force would implement in its efforts to combat crime generally. Cabinet expressed its continued concern about the high incidence of criminal activity across the country and urged the Honourable Minister to intensify efforts to address the issue. Cabinet also approved a recommendation that the Ministry of Public Telecommunications enter into an agreement with Huawei Technologies Company Limited of China to perform a comprehensive needs assessment in order to develop the scope for the establishment of a nationwide broadband network, or for the Smart Guyana project. The assessment will include the level of effort and financing required and the consideration of information systems applications for all levels of government. The agreement, however, does not preclude the government of Guyana from entering into similar arrangements with any other interested party. In January 2016, the 20th to be exact, Cabinet approved a board of directors for the Guyana Power and Light Incorporated. One such person appointed to the board was Mr. Leslie Romalo, who was appointed. He has since asked to be relieved given his challenges and responsibilities as managing director of his company, which covers both Guyana and Suriname. As a result, Cabinet considered and gave its no objection to Mr. Kester da Costa becoming a member of the board and to replace Mr. Romalo, who Cabinet noted had conducted, of course, his efforts exemplary, and we thanked him. Cabinet has also approved the appointment of a board of directors of the Commission, the National Commission for the Elderly. These members will include Ms. Everett Audrey de Leon as chair, Mr. Stanley Chase, Ms. Alima Nazir, Mrs. Wendell Roberts, Mrs. Negla Brandis, Ms. Joan Bavigans, Ms. Roxanne Prescott, Dr. Melissa DeHart of the Ministry of Health, and a representative to be named from the parliamentary opposition. The National Commission of the Elderly is concerned with improving the quality of life of our elderly citizens and to provide them with a sense of security and belonging, with feelings of health and worthiness. Specifically, the Commission advises the government on policies for the elderly and coordinates and monitors programs and services for them. Cabinet also approved the appointment of His Excellency Mario Estuardo Torres Townsend as non-resident ambassador of Guatemala to Guyana. Ambassador Townsend will replace His Excellency Giovanni Rene Castillo Polanco and will be based in Trinidad and Tobago. Diplomatic relations were established between Guatemala and Guyana on May 1st, 1992. Cabinet as well approved the attendance of the Vice President and Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs at meetings which are upcoming with the incoming Secretary General of the United Nations, Mr. Antonio Gutierrez on November 18th and 19th. So Minister of Foreign Affairs will lead a delegation to those meetings, which are going to be held, in fact, next week. It will be recalled that the government of Guyana had approached the Secretary General of the United Nations to act in accordance with his obligations under the Geneva Agreement to choose another means of settlement of the border controversy between Venezuela and Guyana in accordance with Article 33 of the United Nations Charter. The Secretary General had agreed to recommend a way forward for the final resolution of the controversy before he demits office in November 2016. The meetings between the Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs and the incoming Secretary General would be part of the process to secure that recommendation. The Director General of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs would accompany the Honourable Minister to the meetings. Cabinet as well agreed to the attendance of the Minister of Public Telecommunications at the 4th meeting of Ministers of E-Government of Latin America and the Caribbean to be held in Santiago, Chile from December 1st to 2nd of this year. This meeting will be hosted by the Inter-American Development Bank in collaboration with the Organization of American States and the government of Chile. The meeting will bring together Latin American and Caribbean leaders in the ICT sector to develop frameworks to promote successful information communications technology policies for the implementation of digital programs in government work. Participation in this meeting will give Guyana the opportunity to build networks with countries of Latin America and the Caribbean and provide insights into the development of ICT in these countries. The Honourable Minister will be accompanied by Mr. Floyd Levi, head of the e-government unit of her ministry. Cabinet has agreed to the attendance of the Honourable Minister of Public Infrastructure at the 46th meeting of Energy Ministers of Latin American Energy Organization, known as OLADE, to be held in Quito, Ecuador on November 24th, 2016. The Honourable Minister will also participate in the Inter-American Development Bank's Regional Energy Policy Dialogue that is associated with the meeting. The IDB Regional Dialogue will focus on progress towards the goals of sustainable energy for all in Latin America and the Caribbean, and will discuss as well the challenges and support needed to achieve these goals. Cabinet has approved the participation in a consolidation of laws training program to be sponsored by the Improved Access to Justice in the Caribbean project. This training program will be held in Anguilla from November 17th to 18th, 2016, and the program will provide training in the following areas. Firstly, the consolidation process. Secondly, techniques employed in the consolidation cycle. Thirdly, document management at each stage of the consolidation cycle. Ms. Joanne Bond, Senior Parliamentary Counsel, and Ms. Ronetta Sargent, Parliamentary Counsel, will attend the training program. Guyana will, with Cabinet's approval, participate in the mid-year meeting of the Caribbean Regional Technical Assistance Center Steering Committee, CATAC, to be held in Barbados on November 21st, 2016. The meeting will give special attention to macroeconomic statistics, and Guyana's delegate, Ms. Sonia Rupnaud, Director of the Office of Budget of the Ministry of Finance, will make a presentation in this regard. Moving on, Cabinet has also approved the attendance at the 5th Regional Meeting on Partnerships between the public and private sectors for disaster reduction in Latin America and the Caribbean. The meeting is sponsored by the Latin American and Caribbean Economic System, CELA, and the United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction, and will be held in Santiago, Chile from November 27 to 30th, 2016. Attendance at this meeting will enable Guyana's National Disaster Risk Management Coordinating Agency and the Civil Defense Commission to be appraised of best practices for public-private partnerships and to help in the development of strategic relationships with public and private agencies. Ms. Alana Walters, Planning and Training Assistant of the Civil Defense Secretariat, will attend the meeting on behalf of Guyana. Guyana will also participate in the 3rd meeting of the Working Group of the Community of Latin American and Caribbean States, CELAC, on the advancement of women to be held in Santiago, Dominican Republic, from November 16 to 18, 2016. The main subject of the meeting will be food security and rural women. The gender strategy for the implementation of the Food and Nutrition Plan of CELAC will also be presented for approval. In this regard, Mr. Jason Shepard, manager of the Gender Affairs Bureau of the Ministry of Social Protection, will attend the meeting. Cabinet also gave its agreement and objection to Guyana being represented at a meeting of senior technical personnel of the South American Council of Education of UNISAR to be held in Caracas, Venezuela, from November 21st to 22nd, 2016. The meeting will evaluate and analyze the implementation of the 5-year work plan of the Council in order to advance the consolidation of educational integration in the region. In this regard, Ms. Jennifer Cumberbatch, Director of the National Center for Education Resource Development, NCERD, will attend the meeting and participate on behalf of the Government of Guyana. Approval was also given for a representative of the National Center for Education Resource Development, NCERD again, to attend the 8th Pan-Commonwealth Forum on Open Learning to be held in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, from November 27th to 30th, 2016. The Pan-Commonwealth Forum, which is held every 3 years, is one of the world's leading international conferences on education and technology-enabled learning. Its objective is to share insights and innovations on how technology can be harnessed to provide quality education. The forum, which will be hosted by the Commonwealth of Learning and the Open University of Malaysia, will be attended by Ms. Kim Spencer, subject specialist in innovative information and ICT at NCERD. And lastly, Cabinet granted its no objection to the award of a contract to rehabilitate the Guyana Police Force's band room at Ivleri, Georgetown. The contract is in the sum of $69,028,292 and was awarded to builders, hardware, and general supplies. Thank you. Questions?
Minister, yes, Minister. Adam Harris. Sir, there were previous studies for the e-government program dating back to, I think, 2010 or 2011. Where are the findings of these studies and how relative are they to the studies that would be conducted by Huawei?
Well, very relevant question. I know that the e-government unit has studies. I believe the studies concluded that what transpired or passed for a plan in the past was of no consequence, could not be used. So regrettably, but but in vain, we have no choice but to start, in a sense, all over. So Huawei Technologies has been identified, and we hope to have this done in the shortest possible time. Insofar as the question as to where the studies are, I will endeavor to ask my colleague minister to see if those could be shared with the public.
Quick follow-up. Where in this entire study is the old cable, the broken cable from Linden Letter Mode is going to figure?
As I said, much of that past work has been deemed to have been now obsolete and incapable, some of it, of being resuscitated. Some of the equipment, towers, stations at different points with solar panels and so forth, I believe can be salvaged. But anyone who goes along the Babura Road and to the Lethem Trail will see visible signs of decay and destruction of the cable. And fiber optic cable being what it is, it's not easy at all points in time to just bring two ends together. So I believe it has been concluded and has been reported by Minister of State in the past that that is a spent project, and parts of it can be salvaged, most parts cannot be.
Good morning, Minister. Just two quick things. Could you say where we are with regard to Bai Shinlin and the duty-free equipment and machinery that were seized, and the taxes outstanding to the Guyana Revenue Authority? And could you say, given the current lag in the forestry sector, what is the plan to make the industry more competitive?
Well, In answer to the question about Baishan equipment, seizures, taxes owed, I believe the GRA, the Ministry of Finance, could best answer those. I don't believe that any further action was taken after the last foray. Again, I will endeavor to speak to my colleague. We at the Ministry of Natural Resources deal with the licensing and permission granted to companies and individuals to engage in forest activity. As you know, we took the concessions back, but recovery of taxes owed and so forth would be with the GRA in particular, and I will endeavor to follow up. I don't believe that further action was taken. I believe that the GRA went after what was available, and one gets a sense that not much else was available. But that being as it may, I will find out some more. In terms of the lull, we have seen, as I reported in Parliament on the last occasion, about a 15% drop. And there is a subcommittee established by Cabinet that comprises Ministries of Social Protection, Natural Resources, Public Infrastructure, Communities, and Indigenous Peoples Affairs, who will be looking holistically at the future of forestry. Right now, His Excellency, as you know, is in Marrakesh, Morocco for the COP22 United Nations Climate Change Conference, where forestry looms large and the use of forests as a carbon sink to sequester carbon. And so there are many options that government has. Do we, for example, aggressively go back to giving out our forests for harvesting of logs? Do we do so in a less aggressive way and withhold some for carbon credit financing that we can raise? So these are options that are before Cabinet right now, and as I said, a subcommittee is in the process of examining the options and will report to Cabinet soon.
Just a quick follow-up. We have Yes, just a quick follow-up. We have the budget coming up in a matter of days. Could you say when is it the plan could be expected, because the sector is going to receive some assistance? So is part of that assistance going to be geared towards the competitiveness drive? And could you say when
Well,
that plan is expected?
let me say that the extractive industry sector does not depend as such for assistance from government. In fact, we are required to add assistance to other departments. So we believe that the idea is that forestry and the Guyana Forestry Commission must be competitive, that they must be able to be self-financing and not turn to government for bailout, so to speak. So we don't anticipate that grants, financial grants will be given. There, of course, as I said, has been a decline, not just because of events in Guyana, but because global commodity prices for lumber, particularly from Asia, have dropped. So the budget will reveal, hopefully, some incentives rather than assistance, but incentives to stimulate activity within the sector. These are, as you know, the usual set of concessions on taxes and fuel. So we can expect some of those, but I wouldn't wish to speak in advance of the Minister of Finance about what his package of goodies will contain.
Bakalam, Gino, could we get an update, sir, on the fate of the admin staff at the Wales estate? And second question is, could we have an update on the Cato School? We know some work was done there, or lack thereof. And also the High Street building in Kingston. And the High Street former ministry building that is still in an abandoned state.
Well, Wales administration senior staff, I'm unable to report except to say that indeed, again, Cabinet did receive quite a sobering report from executives of the sugar industry 3 weeks ago, coming out of which, again, proposals were made. We were reminded of the dire state of the industry and its decline over a number of years. This didn't happen over the last 18 months, but in fact, the destruction began much earlier. So again, a subcommittee has been put together. I believe Minister of State has reported on that already. And so it would be premature for me to single out a particular estate to comment on the well-being or welfare of administrative staff at Wales, except to say that Wales, of course, like every other estate, um, is under consideration in its future. Some pronouncements have been made about Wales, and the expectation is that Wales's operations, insofar as factory operations, will combine with IFLOT's. So I don't believe that there will be much displacement of senior staff. The question becomes now what to do with the lands and the laborers. So government is looking at, as I said, several options. Cato School, the Minister of Public Infrastructure is, I know, in active discussions with the Minister of Legal Affairs and Honorable Attorney General about do we allow the company that presided over the bad workmanship, if I can put it that way, to be compelled to go and fix it, or do we surcharge them by way of taking them to court and getting damages and having someone else do it? Does the government itself find monies to repair the school? I think ultimately the well-being and welfare of children and their right to an education must be paramount. So I believe that the Minister of Public Infrastructure is going to be finding ways to do some repairs to the building so that it can be safely and efficiently occupied by the students, because there are issues not just about crumbling walls, but even about the flow of air in the building. And I think the issue of who will pay for it will be pursued by the Honorable Attorney General. So I can report on that. And the last one being High Street. Again, the High Street building continues to stand out as a sore, an embarrassment to past administration, because some costs there are over $700 million, and it is no closer to being effectively occupied. Studies show that even if you put tiles on the first floor, the floor is likely to crumble because the support beams were not present. Both the Guyana Forestry Commission and the GGMC together put over $400 million with an expectation that they may be able to occupy it. But as I said, when structural surveys were done, it showed that the very minimum of persons as well as furniture would have to be put in if it is to be used. I know that the Ministry of Social Protection is looking at it again, and the Ministry of Public Infrastructure is examining ways as to how it could be occupied without it being a danger to life and limb.
Quick follow-up. Quick follow-up, sir, about the contractor that did the Cato School. We notice he's still tendering for contracts and all of this. Wasn't there a decision of blacklisting certain errant contractors?
Well, in a democracy, you have the right to tender. Whether you get it is a different matter. I'm not aware that the contractor, certainly government contracts, I don't believe that the contractor has received. But in a free society, an open society, we can't stop persons from trying. But certainly right now, the mode of government is that we will not support. We will not support this contractor until there's been some purging of the bad work and some contrition, perhaps. I know blame has been shared about who demanded the work proceed as it did, but government is not of the mood now, or has no desire to see this particular contractor get work, particularly when it involves children's safety, buildings where children will be in. It's not my intention to defame anyone, but I think the facts speak for themselves. Some reporters were able to travel to the site and to see. So hearing is one thing and seeing is another. And I think we can all accept that the work there was beyond shoddy. It was terrible. And this contractor should in fact do the honorable thing of perhaps withdrawing the company from bidding, while it perhaps try to bring itself into compliance both with the law and in terms of its own techniques for building.
Davina Samaru from the Evening News. Last week, Minister Harmon said that a subcommittee of cabinet is reviewing several options that you submitted for the state of the Barama workers and for the use of the lands. Could you say what these options are and how the deliberations are going? And secondly, could you say how Guyana is progressing in achieving its pledge at the Paris, when it signed on to the Paris Agreement, to receive 100% renewable energy?
Barama, well, as I reported earlier, there is a subcommittee indeed, and we're looking at the forests in a holistic way. Barama, of course, and the lands to be given up by Barama will engage that. Those lands were very large, in fact, 1.6 million hectares at the time when it was given in 1992. It was considered the largest forest concession ever given out in the world. So now that the lands have, in a sense, reverted to the state is examining the future. One, whether we should give them back out in block, and we have received some expressions of interest from both local and international companies, whether we should cut them into 4 quadrants of about 400,000 hectares each, putting aside some for conservation, putting aside some for small loggers and sawmillers, putting aside for international concessionaires. So those are the options that are before the committee right now. As I said, we are working, and we will be working with Barama, even as it pulls out of the forest, but wishes to maintain sawmilling operations. How do we find a balance that is consistent with government's green economy pathway? Insofar as the Paris commitments go, Guyana, as you know, has been singled out, and particularly His Excellency the President has been singled out amongst world leaders as being one of the foremost champions of conservation. And reports coming out of Morocco now are high in praise. And so Guyana's pathway is certain. It is conditional, of course, on us getting support. We have made commitments to go 100% renewables. We believe that it is achievable within the decade, and we expect that the international community and Friends of Guyana will be supportive. So earlier this week, in fact last week rather, there was a major conference or meeting held here to discuss what is known as the Arco Norte project, that is the linking of Brazil, Suriname, Guyana, and French Guyana in one arc for electricity generation. And Guyana is cited under that project to produce approximately 4,000 megawatts of power to be sold and distributed between the 4 countries. Minister Patterson's attendance at the upcoming OLADE meeting is all meant to be in furtherance of movement towards 100% renewables, and not just producing renewables for Guyana, but producing enough that we can sell power and earn from it. So we are well placed on the road to success. Thank you.
Morning, Minister. Roy and James from Nightly News. 2 questions. Minister, the Guyana Public Service Union on Tuesday evening, I think, expressed frustration that the government is still not returning to the bargaining table. On a number of occasions, Minister Harman would have reported that talks are continuing with the GPSU and the government, but yet the union is accusing the government of slothfulness in this regard. Can you say what is going on with the talks between the GPSU and the government? And 2, Minister, can you say what is the government's position on Rusal's presence here? Because this company over the years has been accused of disrespecting the laws of Guyana, derecognizing the workers' union, and treating workers unfairly. Minister Scott, on 3 occasions, when asked this question, the last, would have given 3 different responses to what is the government's position. I remember in the 9th Parliament, ministers who were serving in this government would have supported a no-confidence motion against then Labour Minister Mansour Nadir. They had promised to take stern action against this company once they take the helm of government, but now they're in government and Rusal continue to do these things they were doing back then. So can you say what exactly is the government's position on Rusal presence here?
Well, you asked firstly about talks at GPSU. I'm not sufficiently close to those talks to give a definitive answer, except to say that government's predisposition is always going to be for talking. We believe that talking is the way forward for resolving differences and conflicts. And so we have no hesitation in speaking to the GPSU or any other union for that matter. So let me say that up front. If at all, and I don't want to be on record as necessarily as making an excuse, but I know that the Minister of Finance and the Ministry of Finance, in particular, the officials, have been consumed over the last few weeks with readying a budget for early presentation at the end of this month, which is going to be history setting in a sense. So if at all, what some may see as sloth may actually be explainable as being a preoccupation with other matters of state, but government, I'm sure, will very soon re-engage the GPSU. And so far as RUSEL is concerned, I think like you, we look on with some high degree of concern. We have read the statements recorded in today's newspaper. Again, we believe that dialogue is the only and best way forward on all matters of disagreement and conflict. And we expect that at the next cabinet meeting upcoming, Minister of Social Protection will make a report and cabinet will then advise on the way forward. So I would not wish to color or prejudice what I know shall be talks, because every situation must be talked through. And I would expect that we will get a report and we will be able to take it from there. So I wouldn't wish to second guess or to change. I'm not aware of the different statements that Minister Scott has made, except that government stands in support of and on behalf of the ministers within the ministry, both the senior minister, Minister Lawrence, and Minister Scott. But we will get a report on what exactly transpired. But as I said, dialogue is the only way forward, and that is, I believe, going to be the first approach that is going to be recommended.
Rabindra Rupla, Guyana Chronicle. Based on the statistics presented to Cabinet, has there been any proposal to further bring in the Army in the crime fighting?
No. As you know, the Defense Act, Chapter 1501, sets out the specific use and deployment of the Guyana Defense Force. It is only if the state is under threat, and sometimes that threat is as a result of criminal or other violent activity within the state, that the Army should be deployed. We may see some confidence building patrols where members of the Army may go alongside the police, but at this point in time, we don't believe that there's any threat to the state that should see deployment of the military. We did have, of course, a situation last weekend where the PRISM is concerned, and we know that that could pose, if it not handled properly, a national security threat, and the GDF was rightly and properly deployed for that operation, and again, rightly and properly returned to barracks. But the sight or specter of men and women in green in patrol, we don't believe should be a regular feature. That is not as it will never happen, but it should not be a regular feature. And at this point in time, though the trends do show higher incidence of crimes with firearms, we don't believe that they pose a threat that warrants the use of the military.
Minister Gilleri, Kaitra News again. There was in the past a lot of criticisms with regards to NISIL's operations, and the forensic auditors listed a number of changes. Could you say how those changes are being effected? And the second question is, there were a number of inquiries that was ordered by the government. Who is paying for these inquiries? And the second question is there a budget that was passed with regards to these?
Very well. In terms of NISIL, yes. NISIL for those of you who may know or not know, was actually established prior to 1992. But we believe that its purpose and intent changed drastically over the years. So I believe now that some of the recommendations are being adhered to in terms of what exactly it is supposed to be doing. It was not meant to be this agency that went out as a money-making enterprise, a profiteering unit, so to speak. So yes, we have had changes effected, and I know that the leadership and stewardship of the company is going well. So we don't anticipate that it should right now be disbanded. Insofar as the inquiries, the question is who is paying? Government paid for the inquiries, and I believe that these were commissioned by the Ministry of Finance and the Ministry of Finance's budget. We certainly did not anticipate the scale at which we would have to hold inquiries, and perhaps even at sometimes some of the scale was a bit overwhelming. But the budget would be from the Ministry of Finance's budget.
Sir, we have one more question. Sir, Durham Wills, Damara Waves. On the issue of the PNC ministers or the PNC affiliated ministers holding meetings, public meetings at the party's headquarters, sir, could you say if the government ministries will be paying for the place that is Congress Place to hold these public meetings?
I don't see how that could be.
Because there was some indication in the press that the ministry's resources would be used at the meetings for these ministers of government. So I'm wondering if the space is going to be rented.
I'm not sure what exactly was reported in the press about payment, but the physical presence of a person who happens to be a minister at the party headquarters, I don't see how the ministry would pay for that. I believe it's common knowledge, for example, that prior to coming out of office, every Saturday morning you could pass down Robb Street and meet all the head of state with his security and her security, and all of the ministers would be arrayed there and people would go and meet with them. So I don't think that this is some aberration that is offensive. If it is that it is foisted on the budget of the Ministry of Finance is a different matter, but it is not something that is unique, certainly, and I'm surprised that it has taken on this degree of skepticism, because it as I said, any citizen could have gone down Robb Street on a Saturday morning and spent hours there meeting with ministers and raising their problems with them, and the head of state. Our previous heads of state used to be there as well. So this is nothing new. It is the way political parties and governments function around the world. So I think you would notice that much of the criticism did not really come from the opposition, because this is a practice that they perfected quite well.
Sir, yesterday opposition leader Barrett Jagdeo blamed Booker Tate in part for the failure of Gaisuco. There is a report that this administration is seeking the return of Booker Tate into the sugar industry. How accurate, first of all, is the fact that Booker Tate is coming, and your reaction to the fact that Booker Tate is responsible for the poor shape of the sugar industry?
Well, I got my, sorry about this, but a Kaichur news. Jagdeo Ramatar trying to confuse the nation with trickery should be ashamed to blame others, Gaisuco chairman. I rest my case. I rest my case. I believe that headline, quoting the chairman of Gaisuco, sums up where the blame lies. I think, like every bad worker, when you blame your tools when you don't get your way, but it is your methodology, your penchant for entering into the affairs of the company, for putting persons who had no business being around there, that led to the destruction. The decision to foist a $200+ million US factory that never generated one kilowatt of power, that had bad machinery, water that was drawn from a canal is used to cool some equipment which apparently only could have used distilled water or something. You can't blame Booker Tate for that lawlessness. And I believe the chairman is right. They're trying to, in Guyanese terms, kerfuffle the nation, and the nation knows exactly who, to use the vernacular, who broke up Gaisuku. It wasn't Booker Tate, and neither was it the APNU AFC government. So as far as I'm aware, no decision has been taken to re-engage Booker Tate or any other company of that standing. Booker Tate, as you know, is a world-renowned administrator in the sugar industry. I'm sure that they have had successes and they have had setbacks, but I believe their successes outnumber their setbacks. But I would not here allow us to accept what is a smoke and mirrors exercise to say that it wasn't me, it was Booker Tate. Who invited Booker Tate in? And, you know, as is the case of bad decision makers, they try to blame their staff or the computer that was given to them or the phone wasn't working. Bad decision making led us to where we are, and it should be squarely at the feet of the former administration.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good day, everyone.